Hi everyone, this is Abel. Welcome back to my channel. Today, again, we have a ton of really cool books to talk about. A few of them I'm really enthusiastic about because they blew my mind just by reading the description. A few of them just flew to my chart immediately, like right away, like I need you right now. And we have reading updates, writing updates. This is going to be great. Let's get ready. But before we start, remember that if you enjoy science fiction and fantasy books, this is the perfect place for you. So if you want to see more videos like this, please consider subscribing, leave a like, share this video. Also, if you want to support the channel, you can check out my own epic fantasy novel, The Crimson Fire. The link is in the description down below. Okay, let's start with a bang, and I need you to stay with me, stay focused, because this will destroy your sense of reality and will challenge your idea of what an author can do, especially when he is independently published and he is free, he or she or them, they're free to do whatever they want on an artistic level and to pursue their idea of a cohesive narration that it is huge and large and has big themes and big ideas, okay? And stay with me, stay focused, because we need to start a little bit with science fiction. And I know that 99% of you, when I talk about science fiction, you're going to run away screaming in fear because you only read fantasy books. And I know and I understand and I feel you. There's a ton of reasons why. You're not going to discuss them right now, but stay with me because you'll be rewarded at the end, okay? Even if you only enjoy fantasy books, even if we are starting with a science fiction book, stay with me because this is interesting, okay? Okay, stay with me. So we have to start just a little bit of a story time. So it is Monday morning for me, and I was scouring the internet, searching for new independently published book, as one does on a Monday morning, and I found this really interesting title, and the name of the author was somehow familiar to me, but I wasn't able to properly put a finger on a specific reason why. But anyway, so the title is the Regolith Temple, okay, by Roxana Arama. Maybe the name and the surname of the author I had mentioned in a way, or I had crossed my path with another book from this author. And the cover, it's beautiful, it's so atmospheric, it's peak science fiction, it's peak character-driven science fiction. And this is maybe done by Jeff Brown, could be. So this is the first time we name check Jeff Brown in my video for today, okay? We could do a drinking game for each and every time I mention this artist. And I checked out the description. Stay with me. Then it says, an ancient Roman temple terraforming Mars. A Roman temple terraforming Mars. An android longing for his human wife. Okay. Will their epic clash bring Earth to its knees? And I was like, this is weird. Why do we have Roman cultures and a temple terraforming Mars? What is happening here? And I read the descriptions. So we have this android, he was once a human, and for some reason he is forced to, he has access to his memories of when he was a human being, and he sees that he had a pretty difficult life with his wife and his son. He was not a very good person at the time, and he was also a researcher, and he was one of the person contributing or driving the research for the creation of a human brain. Okay, but then the research center gets sold to a Roman temple, to a priestess that it's the head of a Roman temple, and they use the technology of the artificial human brain to colonize Mars. And then there's shenanigans ensues, so he has to somehow save his human son. He has to deal with the past. There's conspiracy theories, there's political intrigue, all the stuff that you love in high concept hard sci-fi, but also pretty very much character driven. So this is everything that I love and I enjoy in science fiction. But now it comes the mind-bending side of things, okay? And stay with me. So you know when you go on Amazon, and if the book is part of a series, it will tell you the title, the name of the author, and then a link to see all the other books in a series. But this one didn't have a description for a series. This has a link to correlated works, which means that usually when you had that, the book you're reading is a spin-off to a main series, okay? So, and if you touch them, you can have other spin-offs and novellas, and then you have a link to the main series. So it does happen that you have, I don't know, the Stormlight Archives, and then you have the novellas of the Stormlight Archives, like, I don't know, Edge Dancer. They won't have in that link the series. They will have connected works, correlated works, okay? So I said, oh, okay, this is a spin-off to a main series. Let's go and check out the main series. Then I go to the pages, and lo and behold, we don't have another major series. We have a fantasy book. And that fantasy book, and that's why when the light turned on and it clicked, I know this fantasy book. It is The Exiled Queen by Roxana Arama. Again, with a beautiful cover by Jeff Brown. But what's going on here? This is a fantasy book. It is epic fantasy / historical fiction in a Roman-inspired world, and I talked to you about this. We discussed and how fascinated I was by the central premise and the idea that this was a mix between epic fantasy and historical fiction, especially because the main setting was heavily inspired by the Roman Empire. You know, the Roman Empire that all we dudes are obsessed with. And this was a story about an exiled princess of a kingdom that is watching all the other kingdom inevitably falling against the invasion of the Roman Empire. And there's other political things going on because she should have been sentenced to death for some reason, and then to avoid that, she gets married to a neighboring kingdom, and she resigned herself to watch her own kingdom from afar as an exiled queen, of course. And then she's put in a position to, when she could be potentially be able to reunite other kingdoms to stand up against the Roman Empire and trying to save all of those small and minor kingdoms. So it had this really grounded and human story about this princess that needs to prove herself to be worthy to be a queen, because it looks like they don't really have queens in their kingdoms. They only have kings. So the fact that she is the next in line for the succession is a problem in and of itself. So it sounded really interesting. An historical fantasy with a nice world building inspired to the Roman Empire, because we don't have that much of those. Even if we are that obsessed with the Roman Empire, we don't have epic fantasy series, that much of an epic fantasy series with that kind of settings, okay? So it was really interesting. But the question is, why is this in the same series, in the same world with the Regolith Temple? What is going on here? And then I read the description of the, we cannot call it series, but the universe that you have on the Amazon listing, and it is mind-blowing. So listen to this. There's no way I can explain it to you if you don't read it properly, because you know how difficult it is for me to find the worlds. You have no idea how smart I sound in Italian, okay? So let me read it for you. So the most important book you've probably never heard of is On the Nature of Things by the poet Lucretius. He was a Roman poet. 2000 years ago, this poem spoke about atoms, the law of physics, the universe without gods, but then the poem was lost to history. When a copy of the ancient manuscript resurfaced in 1417, it fooled the Renaissance, ushering a new modern world. With a poetic flourish on the nature of things, is dedicated to the divine Venus, which was called the delight of humans and gods, which is the name of this universe. The Light of Humans and God is an innovative series that takes you into an alternate timeline where Lucretius' book, it is scientific knowledge, and those were never lost. Okay, so it changed the shape of the universe. It unfolds across millennia, from the dawn of Lucretius' era in the Roman Empire, with the exiled queen, and then it goes to the far future of Earth and Mars with the Regolith temple, and each novel is a standalone that captures a specific period of that timeline and gives us an exploration of how past, present, and future societies would have been influenced by changing that single aspect, with that poem influencing our society, our history, our present, our future. How bold is that? How incredible is that? And of course, that's incredibly fascinating for me, because universes and books like this, they cannot exist in traditional publishing. They can only exist with independently published authors that have the freedom to decide what and when to publish. Let me explain it really briefly. It is one-on-one math for any kind of publishing. The most difficult thing that you have to do when you publish your book is to build your brand, so that your name is immediately recognizable when you're launching a new book. And that's why when you enter the market with a fantasy book, it is much easier to keep going with the series, so that you do the heavy lifting with marketing the first book, and that will trickle out with the rest of the series, because you'll have matching covers and matching titles, and that it will be easier for you to promote the rest of the series, and potentially to promote other series, maybe in the same universe, maybe in other universe. And the same goes with science fiction. When you start with science fiction, it is easier to build a brand and to attach your name to another science fiction book. And hopefully you're able to sell a bunch of books with the first publication, with the first series, so that you come up with another series in the same subgenre, given if it doesn't matter if it is epic fantasy. If you publish another fantasy series, it will be easier. If it is urban fantasy, if it is science fiction, you usually attach your name to one specific kind of SFF, because it will be easier. And if you try to do something else, to branch out, if you're fantasy and go to science fiction, or if you're science fiction and go to fantasy, you either do that because you had an incredible failure with your first book, or because you have published a substantial amount of book with your original genre, and you have a strong enough of a public, of a following, to try and go somewhere else, and you're pretty sure that at least a respectable amount of those readers will follow you because they trust you. Okay, and that's how it works usually with traditional publishing, because you have to sell a bunch of books before to decide anything else. And if you want to change your trajectory, or having an incredible failure. But when you're self-published, that doesn't matter, because you usually know that you have to be in for a long game. You can have 1, 2, 3 books being relatively successful, or really easily not that much of a success, because you know you have to build your back catalogs of books. You have to publish a bunch of books before you have a substantial return and to say that you're earning monies. And you can do something like this. You're building your audience from scratch, and you can teach them the fact that you are a multi-genre author, that you will publish a standalone fantasy, then you'll publish a standalone science fiction, and then you'll maybe publish a thriller book. That's risky, because it will be harder to build your audience like that, but you can certainly do that, especially if you're ambitious. And here we have an author who's incredibly ambitious, who has created an entire alternate histories of humanity and the whole of those civilizations that shape the face of humanity, of the past, the present, and the future. And she's writing standalone fantasy and science fiction books in that universe that has a really enticing premise. When a single thinks that it's different in the past, has this butterfly effect, that has this ripple effect on the rest of the story of humanity. How crazy is that? How interesting is that? That is the kind of stuff that makes me fall in love more and more every day with indie books and independently published authors, because this is ballsy. This is incredibly ambitious. This is big, and this is the kind of book that ends up immediately in my cart, because I don't want to wait. I was curious about the Exiled Queen. I was curious about the Regolith Temple, but the fact that they are interconnected in this alternate narrative about humanity and history and present and past and future, I cannot wait to dive in and read this. I cannot wait. And if you have read the Regolith Temple, which has been recently published, or the Exiled Queen, let me know, because we need to discuss about this. We need to discuss about this, and we need to support this kind of endeavor, this kind of ideas, this kind of creativity. We need more of this kind of stuff. Oh man, I can't wait. Now, let's talk about the last book. Probably, I think this is the ending of a series, The Art of Legend by Wesley Chu. This is the first book in a series that started with The Art of Prophecy and The Art of Destiny. I have read the first book, but I still haven't reviewed the book on this channel, because I've read that when I still didn't have a presence on YouTube, and I published not that regularly my reviews on Goodreads, so I have to do that. And I still haven't read the second book, but I'm really excited about how the trajectory of this series. The broad strokes of the setting is that the Chosen One is not the Chosen One at all, actually. So we have this protagonist that was prophesied to be the Chosen One, and he grew up with the conviction that he was, and he was respected and beloved and like that Chosen One for all of his life, until something happens and he realized that he is not. And probably the rest of the people in the kingdom understand that he's not the one that will save them from the invaders. And he has to team with an unlikely group of heroes and allies to try and save the kingdom anyway, even if he's not actually that kind of prophesied Chosen One. And what I loved of the first book, and as I told you, I'll give you a better review in due time, was the tone, which was able to have really dramatic moment, really cinematic fight and ideas and aesthetics, and at the same time added moments of levity, which were really well done. It is really difficult to inject humor in epic fantasy story, because it often leads to it is dangerous, because it can cheapen the value of the story and the meaning and the drama of the situation. But here it was done so well because of the nature of the character, which is so unique. And man, I cannot wait to see the end of the series. It looks like the ending is a chunker, more than 700 pages. So yeah, if this is a series, I really hope it can wrap everything with a bow, with a nice bow, and it is really compelling and gives us a satisfying ending. But I have no reason to do not trust Wesley Chu, because the first book was so good and so entertainment, so well done on so many levels. So yeah, I need to read book 2. I need to give you specific reviews for the first 2 books, and I need to give you a review for this one. I need to read it. And the artwork, oh man, the whole series has beautiful cover. This one may be the last one, my favorite of the whole series. So yeah, really enthusiastic, can't wait to read it. And if you have read the first 2 books, let me know what you think about those, because I need someone to discuss and to gush about this series and how much I'm loving it. There's a really big and ambitious space opera that I have to mention, which is the Celestial Saga by Alex O'Connor. I mentioned the first book many months ago because I found that the cover was so unique and so very well done and different from the usual space opera cover that you have, because usually in this kind of subgenre you find a spaceship and a planet or a sun and a beautiful backdrop of stars, but here you have characters that oddly enough makes it almost look more as a graphic novel or a comic book than a actual novel. But Alex O'Connor has confirmed that this was his idea, because it is a way to focus the fact that the book is about the characters, is a character-driven story with a huge scope in a space opera setting. So I mentioned the first book, and then we have, in the meanwhile, he released the second one, which was the Shadow of the Emperor, when you had the big bad guy on the back, which is really unique and ambitious and big, and it gives you the vibes of a huge story. And then he released a few days ago, he showed off the cover for the third book, which is Brave New Galaxy, and I think this is the end of the series. And again, we have a full cast on the cover with many characters, and that makes it really intriguing for me. So yeah, I can wait to give it a try. Just to give you an idea of the general setting of the story, the first book is about an intergalactic war between the Keltari Empire and the United Celestial Alliance. There's a team of this alliance that is called the Nova Team. They're a special forces team. They're on the front line, chasing a specific an enemy leader from that Canary Empire. But then they're forced to decide if they want to work with an unlikely ally. So there's this mistrust there. There's some kind of a conspiracy, probably, and they have to decide if they want to do it, to work with this person or not, because the stakes are so high in this intergalactic conflict. So I liked the general setting. I like the idea. It is short and sweet. It is simple. The first book is just a little bit more than 200 pages, and I still haven't read it, but I definitely want to give it a try. And the fact that the series is complete is a good sign, because this could be one of those trilogy that broke the curse and that allows me to read an entire trilogy in a respectable amount of time. So I will absolutely give it a try. If you have read the first book or the second one, let me know. I think the third one will be published in September. So let me know what you think about it. Let's shout out a completed series. It's a quartet of books that somehow slipped under my radar at the end of last year, when I asked on social media for suggestions about upcoming books, because usually at the end of the year I do a video with my most anticipated reads, and this one was suggested to me, but somehow that tweet with this suggestion, it completely went off my radar, and I feel guilty about it because it sounds absolutely incredible. So this is the Journeys is the first book in this series, is The Archers of Saint Sebastian. And why does it sound so enthralling for me? First of all, the covers are amazing. They're so unique. I don't think I have ever seen anything like this for epic fantasy books or historical fantasies. Okay, so we have 4 books: Journeys, Squires, Masters, and Guards. And you can see that they have this beautiful focus on a real painting with classic arts. Some of those have really popping colors. This amazing old style and classic painting styles. And on the background you have other objects that are probably related to the setting and the main gist of the story of a specific volume. A few of those are more than 600 pages long, so I'm really curious about those. And they're wrote by Jeanne, Roland. Another thing that makes it really interesting for me is that they have Belgian, ancient Belgian culture imbued and history imbued in a fantasy setting. So we have this really young protagonist in the 14th century that she wants to be an archer and she wants to be part of an elite group of fighters and warriors that are really good with the bow. Okay, so but the problem is that they only accept boys, not girls. So she's really young. I think she's 15 at the beginning of the story, and she has to disguise herself as a boy to be admitted to be part of the selection to become an archer. And the story goes from there. Okay, the shenanigans ensued. Probably the dynamics that you had in Mulan, and when she has to fake this identity just to learn and to be a better archer and to defend the kingdom. And then there's probably a good amount of romance, but the way the story is described, it's like this is a fantasy story with romance elements and not a romance story with fantasy elements, okay? Which makes all the difference in the world, especially if you're not the right age and you're not the target audience. I don't think I am specifically the target audience for this kind of books, but the reviews are amazing. This one, especially the first one, of course, as it often happens, is the one that has the one with most reviews. It has on Goodreads more than 450 reviews, almost all 5 stars, and on Amazon, sorry, and on Goodreads we have 313 with a 4.6 score. So it must be done really well. And there's a pretty lengthy description of tropes that you can find in the books that give you an idea and the sense of the direction of the story. It says part Robin Hood, part Princess Bride, with a pinch of Mulan and a dash of Cyrano de Bergerac. Yeah, yes. It's perfect for adults who love young adult themes. That's good for me. So, unrequited love, ugly heroines who stay ugly. That's interesting. Friendship, coming of age, romance, adventure, archery competition, a unique inspired setting that looks like the city of Bruges, this specific Belgian aesthetic. Yeah. I definitely going to give it a try, and I want them in my library, on my shelves. So if you have read this, because as I told you, the first one was released in 2021, let me know. And if you want to discuss about this, let me know too. I'll let you know what I think about it as soon as I finish it. Let's go with a little bit of hard sci-fi, post-apocalyptic, maybe a bit of a techno thriller too, and it is Husk by Nathaniel's Eliason? I don't know. This is probably the first time I'm butchering a surname in a video, and we're pretty far along in the video. Go Abel! Yay me! Okay, so the basic gist of this one is that the protagonist is a tech. So someone who is in charge with maintaining the servers that house those servers are housing humanity's collective consciousness. Because at a certain point, when you turn 25, you can transfer your mind inside a virtual world. Okay, so that's the basic idea. But the problem is that and humanity, they were forced to do that because the world at large was destroyed by a really incredibly powerful disease that consumed culture and the rest of the world. Okay, so they basically need to stay there to have a reasonably satisfying life. The problem is that he is forced to discover some kind of a conspiracy, because he understands that there are forces trying to destroy that virtual world, and that maybe someone really close to him was not a trusted person anymore. So he has to decide who he can trust and how to battle to save this virtual world when the rest of humanity actually leaves. So he says that he becomes outcast, abandoned, exiled. He must uncover the truth about this universe, or it's called Marrow, before he gets destroyed. And the book looks like a post-apocalyptic, action-fueled sci-fi adventure, and yeah, it looks really interesting. You know, when you mash up that kind of desperation that you have in a post-apocalyptic world, but you also see the way culturally humanity tries to find a way to keep being human in a way, to do not lose contact with the usual things that define us, with the menial things that we do. I'm really curious to see how this virtual world works, actually, and how much humanity became dependent on that kind of environment, and why someone who will be interested in destroying it. So let's see how it goes. It sounds really intriguing. I'll let you know what I think about it as soon as I finish reading it. Outlaw Planet by M.R. Carey. This is a standalone novel about a protagonist called Bess, which is a renegade, a hero, former teacher, and of the gun she carries, which is called Wakeful Slim. And the gun is sentient because the previous owner of this gun left pieces of himself inside the gun. How crazy is that? You know, it's almost like having the sentient sword in a fantasy book, when this world is kind of incredibly powerful, but also a little bit cursed, and has this, and gives the protagonist those incredible powers too. And yeah, I want to know. Especially because this is a character-driven story about the way the protagonist Bess changed so much. But it is also the ending part of an interdimensional war, the most brutal war in the multiverse. How big is that? And I wonder if this is connected in any way with the Infinity Gate duology, which was previously written by M.R. Carey. And that was a story about multiverses and different realities, parallel dimension, battling this endless war. I think there's a clue there in the description. It sounds really good. It gives the vibes, especially with the covers, of a post-apocalyptic and a little bit of sci-fi western story. So yeah, I'm really curious about it. I have to admit that I haven't read anything by this author. He is the writer of the Book of Collie too, and of The Girl with All the Gifts. The Girl with All the Gifts, which was a Philip K. Dick Awards winner, and Infinity Gate was between the best, was the New York Times best science fiction and fantasy books of the year. So I'm pretty sure this will be amazing too. So absolutely give it a try. And if you have read anything by this author, let me know what you think about it. This one sounds pretty unique too, Awaken Archangel by CJ Piperata. And this is tells the tagline is, before humanity, before the fall, there was Michael. So it looks like this will take a lot from Christian aesthetics and what happens in heaven, because here we have a genre blend between science fiction and fantasy. It says, in a world stitched from code and myth, where angels are dreamers, artists, warriors, and rebels, the last hope for a broken heaven is a painter with his world and a secret even he doesn't know. So I like the fact that the main setting is heaven, and I want to know how it works. Is this a name for a physical place, or if it is actually something that it is uncorporeal? Because if you blend science fiction and fantasy, you can do that, but I don't know how it works, and I'm curious about it. And it says that the main protagonist is Michael, probably the Archangel, that has no past, no name, no purpose, and he is left doing the only thing that he remembers, which is he's quite good at doing, which is fighting. And he gets recruited to be a gladiator for the Universal Technology Initiative, which is a project on Eastern Island. So do we have floating islands? Yes. Do we have floating islands? That's really cool. And then he meets a scientist, Trudy, who's an atheist, the only atheist in paradise, and she discovers that there's a threat buried deep underground. So in the end, there's another tagline at the end of the description that says, "This isn't the fall you've heard about. It's the one that rewrites everything. Heaven is about to get a reboot." And it says that this is perfect from His Dark Materials, Mortal Engine, and Clockwork Angel, because it has this aesthetic with gas lamp, world building, angelic warfare, philosophical steampunk, with the good omens humor. There's a lot here to unpack, okay? The aesthetics, the potential aesthetics look good. The mechanics of it on many levels looks really interesting. But I also really want to know how it works, how the world building works, and how do the authors takes those concepts, that kind of aesthetics, and makes it grounded. Can we use that word in this specific context? So like, how do the society actually functions, and how and why Michael doesn't remember his past, and what's the underlying menace there, how close this will be to the aesthetics that we have of the Old Testament, and to that, and how fresh it will be, and how it will be potentially, I guess a lot, deviate from that. Yeah, this is original, also pretty familiar, and the idea that we have most gas lamp and more steampunk recently, it's a good thing for me, because that's a subgenre that I think deserves more space and more eyes on it. So yeah, I'll absolutely give it a try. This has been suggested to me from a reviewer and arc reader. I think it was Andres Early Reads, which was one of the first reviewers of my own epic fantasy novel, and I think, if I remember correctly, he spoke highly of this novel. So I will absolutely give it a try, and if you have read it, let me know what you think about it. I'll let you know what I think about it as soon as I finish it. Mourn Not the Mortals by Jordan Smith. First of all, this is a banger of a title. It sounds so poetic, so musical, and so heavy-hitting. Mourn Not the Mortals. Yeah, that's really, really good of a title. This is an epic fantasy story. It's in a setting when there was an ancient race that left the country, the kingdoms, the continent probably, but they left behind relics, which are incredibly powerful. And those relics are really sought after because they give advanced They give advantage on a strategic level for warring kingdoms, of course. And there's the protagonist, which is a young girl, that the protagonist, a woman, that is tasked to go outside the borders of the city. The description says that she has never left her city. So when she is tasked to go and search for another relic, there is no guarantee that she will come back to her family. But again, she does that. She goes and searching for that specific relic, because it looks like that their kingdom, the city, they really need that to reinstate power. So there's political intriguing going behind that. But at the same time, there's another expedition from another country searching for the same relic from a kingdom that already owns one of those. A specific relic that gives them the ability to see the future, so they have a huge advantage if compared to the expedition with our protagonists, and they have to rush to see who gets the relic first. And I think this is just the inciting incident for the whole world building and any bigger story with the bigger scope. This is the first book in a series, is around 400 pages long. And yeah, just because it has a really atmospheric title and a nice minimalistic cover, you see it there, and a nice pitch, and a nice basic idea. We all love ancient relics and lost civilization and incredible powers. So yeah, I'll absolutely give it a try, and I'll let you know what I think about it as soon as I finish it. I have more, but I don't have time today to talk about this book. And if you have suggestions about books that I should mention here, please let me know. But I'll save all of the rest of the books that I have found for today's video for another. I'll mention them in the coming weeks, okay? A few reading updates. I'm reading An Exile of Warhost by Joshua Walker. This is the first main entry on his main series. You have other entry points there and novellas specifically, but this is the meat and bones of the series. This is an epic fantasy story in a world building where you have this huge nation, this tree that it is so huge that covers other nations, and you have the people living, the tree dwellers living in that tree, and they have this symbiotic relationship with the tree. It's a really interesting, really cool, pretty unique world building, and I love the fact that the dynamics and the way the story works are pretty conventional, pretty classic. And if you enjoy epic fantasy and high fantasy, you'll be at home with this book. But Walker is also really, really good in injecting specific world building elements that make it fresh, make it unique. The way those tree dwellers have this specific relationship with the tree, and how they change and how they work differently as a society if compared with all the other kingdoms, is incredible, because it makes also for a weird balance on a power level with the other countries. So what they want and what they deem to be a worthy life is different from what the other country and kingdoms believe in. And there's also cultural consequences, religious consequences. It's a banger. It's really, really unique, and I can't wait to go on and read the rest of the series. I'm also reading Warhost of Vastmark, which is the third book in the UK edition of the Wars of Shadow and Light and Shadow by Janny Wurts. If you have the American edition, Ships of Warriors and Warhost of Vastmark will be in a unique volume, but for the edition I'm reading this one, which is the third book, okay? And I can really tell that I was maybe right, because one of the few things that I think didn't work that well in the second book is that was for me very evidently a portion of the story. You had something that could have been considered as an ending, because there is a climatic event at the end of that volume that I had, but for me, I thought that this was not what we were supposed to have as the ending of a story. So there are people that suggest you to read Ships of Merrier, and you have this edition to go straight and read Warhost of Vastmark right away, because you will enjoy the story more, because you will have the complete pictures. I wasn't able to do that because I had other commitments, but I am pretty pumped to see how the story developed in this one and to see how the story goes. Okay, Janny Wurts is a master. She has a way with words that it is unparalleled. She has incredibly character work, incredible very relatable and very deep themes interwoven with the plot and the character development. If you want to learn something on how to write epic fantasy story, read this one. And if you want to enjoy something that is this big, huge and epic and really very deliberate in the way it is constructed, absolutely go and give it a try. And I am also reading The Black Mantle by Andrew Watson. This is the second book in the main series. There's also a novella. And the first one was Harbinger of Justice, and the novella is called Silence is Silver. Both the book and the novella I enjoyed very much. Weirdly enough, the novella a little bit more than the main series, the main book. And this one, the second one, I can already tell that it is better of both those books, because it's like Andrew really took notes about what we loved and what we wanted to hear more about, and we have much more of a focus on Rai as a character, whilst then in the first book we had much more on Naya. Actually, I felt that way. I don't know if the page count would actually work that way. And we also have answers about the specific questions that we have in the at the end of the first book about a secondary character. I was so curious to see what was going to happen with him, even if he wasn't the protagonist, because I thought that that character was in the most interesting position of all the others at the end of the book, and we are slowly having more answer and more of an exploration about his position right there. And if you have read the book, you know what I'm talking about. I don't want to spoil the book. So I'm enjoying it so much, so very much. So it's been a couple of very lucky months for me reading wise. I'm really, really happy. And yeah, if you haven't checked Joshua Walker or Janny Wurts or Andrew Watson, you should absolutely go and give them a try. Writing updates. So I will mention the title of the second book in June. If you follow me on Instagram, you have seen that post specifically. And I can tell you that the second book is already in great shape. I'm going through revisions for this edition that, as I told you, and if you have been following me for quite a while, you know that this was published in Italy a couple of years ago. And it is a blessing. It's a great opportunity to go and revisit a book in hindsight with the added experience that you have after a couple of years as an author, and to try to fix the things that maybe didn't work perfectly, and to maybe change something, to reshuffle a few things, and to properly make the story as best it can be before the publication. And I can already tell you that I'm taking notes from editors and feedback and adding a few stuff. It will be definitely longer than the Italian edition. The Italian edition was around 120k, 120,000 words. This one, the English one, will be released hopefully pretty soon, is almost around 1,060, and it will probably cross 180,000 words. So it will be a chunker. Yeah, very much longer than the first book that was around 112k words. So it will be longer and more ambitious. It will be a little bit different in tone, because the first book was much more of a slow burn. It has to set the characters, it had to introduce the world and the main conflict, but it was very much a straightforward story with a clear focus on a specific event. all the moving things in the first book, they were slowly bringing you to a specific place at the end of that volume with a specific event. This one is different because, as in many epic fantasy stories that you have, the main cast is split, so they all go in their separate ways, and you slowly see a few of them converging for the end, but don't expect a similar ending to that first book, because you will have micro climatic events during the story. So there's much more action, even if it's not specifically an action-focused story, okay? I like slow burn stories. I like character-driven stories. That's what I write. But you have much more action here compared to that one, that they work to develop the characters, but they develop the plot too. And the world opens up. You see much more world building flexing here. You see much more sceneries, and you see much more of a culture. And the stakes are much more higher, because this is the volume where you actually see the origins of the conflict and where potentially the rest of the story can go. I have written 40% of the third book, and this is designed to be a trilogy, okay? I'm doing my best to wrap it up in 3 volumes. I'm doing my best, both on the planning side of things, while plotting the stories, and also by trying to execute it in a way that it is satisfying in 3 volumes. But if I lose control, meaning that if I need time to properly develop the characters and place them in a position when the ending is completely satisfying, and if I need that time and that page count, okay, it could cross the 3-volume mark and become a quartet. As I told you, I'm really, really strongly trying not to do that, because I think that crossing the 3 books mark is always a huge risk, and you need to sell a bunch of books to justify that, okay? You need to sell a lot of books to justify a 4th volume, let alone a longer series. Okay, and I'm not giving myself any kind of delusions about that. I know how difficult the market it is. I know how difficult it is to support a long-running series. So I'm trying to wrap it up in 3 volumes. But if I need more space, I'm not going to shackle myself to 3 volumes because I needed to wrap it up, okay? If I need more time, what I'll do will be I will probably publish the 3rd volume, then publish something else which could be completely original or loosely connect with the series, because as a self-published author, I need to gather new audiences. So when you publish new books in a series, you gather new audiences, and you use the rest of the series as a marketing tool to publish, to push people to read the first book, and hopefully a good percentage of those people will continue and read the rest of the series. But you cannot go on unless you have an incredibly staggering, incredibly unspeakable amount of copies sold, pushing with a single series. Okay, if you want to gather new audience, it's like of a TV show. You can retain your core audience, but you don't get a new audience with a long-running series and a TV show. How it worked on television many years ago. So most of us, we decide to publish something else while we continue the series. So if the series needs more than 3 books, I'll publish the first 3, then I'll publish something else, and then I'll come back and release the last one. Because at that point, I know that the amount of copies that I will be 99% sure that the amount of copies that I will sell of the 3rd and the 4th book will be less and less, because that's how series work. You sell, for example, 100 copies of the first book, then you'll sell maybe 50 or 60 of the second, and then 30 or 40 of the third one. And if you publish a fourth, you understand? So the series have this, they have this trajectory which is natural, okay? And we know how it works, and we accept it as authors and as marketers and as producers, as indie published. That's why we need something else to get new blood, okay? New interest and new readers. So that's my plans for the near future. So as I told you, the second book is pretty healthy, it's going really well, I'm really happy about it. It sounds good, it reads good, it's bigger, it's bolder, and it's exactly what you expect from a second book. The third one sounds really intriguing and even more ambitious of what I'm writing right now, and that's why I told you that if I don't get to wrap it up in 3 books, I will probably wrap it in 4. And I already have what I think will be my next project line up there. That could be a standalone that I publish in between the third and the fourth volume, or it could be published after that. Let's see. I'll let you know more when the time comes. That's all I've got for you today. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this very long video. Remember that if you enjoy science fiction and fantasy books, this is the perfect place for you. So if you want to see more videos like this, please consider subscribing, leave a like, share this video. And if you want to see more videos like this right here, right now, you have more videos like this right here, right now. Thank you again for being here, for your continuous support, and for being awesome. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.